Let's bring in our guest for today, Jason Botterill, the general manager of the Seattle Kraken, kind enough to jump on here on Frankly Hockey with us. And Jason, first of all, we appreciate the time, but first of all, for you, just we were talking about the playoff picture and what could be, and the Seattle Kraken, they are firmly in that conversation in the Western Conference. How would you sum up the season in the Pacific Northwest right now for you?
Well, no, I think we're pretty proud of our situation here right now and proud of how our players have responded. I think our season's gone in sort of three different stages. I thought we got off to a pretty good start, had a pretty good record heading into Thanksgiving, ran into some injuries right around Thanksgiving, losing Jaden Schwartz, Montour, McCann really hurt us from that standpoint. Went through a 1-9-1 stretch at the start of December. Was able to turn it around, proud of our group being able to turn it around. And the last couple of weeks have certainly been fun here. And we're hoping to get Montour back into our lineup soon. We're going to have Stevenson back in our lineup tonight. Excited to see where this team can go here in the next couple of weeks.
How much of this season, Jason, would you say has been dictated by some of the health issues that you've run into, like the inconsistency of who's in, who's out, missing big contributors for a team that for the first part of the year had struggled to score? I guess now that you've turned that around in the scoring department, how much of that would you say has been because of the health?
Well, look, everyone's dealing with it this year. With the condensed schedule, it is a challenge for everybody out there. And, we certainly have to be a scoring by committee team to have success. You look at our game against the Rangers just the other night, having different lines step up, having a power play that has executed, I think, a lot since the start of December has really helped us out from that standpoint. But yeah, whenever you take away a scorer, someone like Jared McCann who can, score from a lot of different areas, or someone like Schwartz who gets right to the net front. That's an area where we have to continue to improve on. When you take those out of our lineup, it certainly hurts us. But been proud of, like I said before, about Lane and his system and keeping the guys energized and trying to continue the development here. And it's been fun to watch the group over the last couple of weeks.
Jason, you mentioned the condensed schedule, and it was such a talking point entering this season. And I'm just curious for you and your medical staff, is there something you've learned this season about managing your players' bodies moving forward because of this condensed schedule and maybe something you weren't expecting?
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say it's just something being in the Pacific Northwest you have to deal with all the time. At my previous stops, being in Pittsburgh and Buffalo, you always hear about the Western Conference teams complaining about the travel and everything like that, and you don't realize how much of an impact it really is until you get out here. But look, what I think it is a situation where we've looked a lot with our staff, just especially when you go through different time zones. That's really the big impact on our players, and just trying to keep their sleep schedule from that standpoint. But also what I've enjoyed working with Lane. Lane's utilized our resources a lot on understanding, certainly just you look at time on ice for our group. When we have success, we're keeping a lot of our forwards in that sort of 17 to 18 range versus getting our guys up to 21, 22, because I believe this month we have 17 games in the month of January, including obviously we're on an East Coast road trip here right now. If you might be able to have success in a game having one of your top players, whether it's a Matty Beniers or Stevenson, playing 22, 23 minutes, but over the course of the month, you're not going to have success there. And I think right after Christmas, you look at a lot of the times our forward group has been more of a 10.5 to 17, 18. I think that's really helped us out a lot. And we're getting good contributions from veteran players like Jordan Eberle, but having some of these younger kids come into our lineup right now, coming up from Coach Seravalli, has really given us a spark too.
17 games in 31 days is insane. I had to stop and process that for a second.
Yeah, it's you get into a role here and stuff, and that's what we've stressed from the day one here, that we have to be a 4-line team to have success. And if you just look at our top 6 when it matches up against some of the big hitters in the Western Conference, it's just not there. But what I've liked is our coaching staff is continuing to try to utilize guys in different roles here, and you see a lot of the success stories. It's because, hey, our fourth line's given an identity of a physicality line right there. You see the third line there. Berkeley Catton has popped the goals now. His first goal continues to develop. Shane and Jared, having a veteran player like McCann on the third line with those guys is invaluable. So, it's been helpful, and certainly we're going to get Stevenson back tonight, and he'll certainly sort of fit in that second line center role.
So you mentioned the energy factor from Lane Lambert has been impressive. The deployment and managing ice time has been impressive. As you've worked with him over the course of the season, what else has stood out to you about the impact that he's made on this group?
Well, I would say Lane has come as advertised. You go through an interview period with him, and both Ron and myself didn't have this long lasting relationship with Lane, but he's delivered just as he has promised. There's an intensity about him. There's a real drive. I think you see it in our team on most nights. There's a work ethic, a consistent work ethic with our team, which is great to see. I think he's added a good defensive structure. Our goaltenders deserve a lot of credit, but I also think our D-corps and our forwards have done a good job of keeping a lot of the shots to the outside, which has certainly helped us for sure. And then probably the one thing that I've really enjoyed working with him is he's utilizing the assets, the resources we have within our organization. We touched on it earlier, just about sports science and our trained staff on just about all the travel. But the next morning he's worked very closely with me and our development staff on some of these young players. When Berkeley Catton maybe wasn't scoring, what do we have to continue to work on his game? Even our star players, you look at a player like Matty Beniers, he's continuing to develop his game from an offensive standpoint. So that focus on, hey, what do our veterans need from a rest and recuperation, and what do our young players need from an on-ice development standpoint? It's been very good communication with him, and I've enjoyed working with him.
So you're in an interesting spot here in that your team has clawed back into this playoff chase. You're holding down one of those spots today. And yet as manager, you're not necessarily just thinking about what's right in front of you. You're also thinking down the line. So as we get closer to the Olympic roster freeze and then the trade deadline, how will you manage that with some pending UFAs, knowing that this team has worked its butt off to try and put you in a spot to be successful this year? You want to give them every opportunity to compete for the playoffs, but you also need to manage your assets appropriately when it comes to the long term. How will you juggle that?
Hey, it's going to be something that we constantly look at here. And we've certainly been in touch with the representatives for all our free agents. They understand it, but right now we'll have conversations as we go along closer to the deadline with them. But our main focus right now has been, hey, improving this team. How do we get focused on teams? And as we discussed before, having 17 games in the month, like, our players have to be focused on hockey here right now and stuff from that standpoint. But no, they've worked extremely hard to get back in the race here. We've also looked back on our history, having a player like Matty Beniers in the playoffs his second year. I believe he played 14 playoff games that year. That was an invaluable experience for him moving forward. We understand the importance of getting into the playoffs and what that can give to a Shane Wright or a Berkeley Catton or a Riker Evans on the back end. So it's something that we will continue to work hard to make sure that we're in that position.
Jason, you've been through a couple of stops, as you were mentioning before, so you've got a lot of experience doing this job in this league. I'm just curious, how big of a factor is managing up as a GM? We always love to talk about the roster construction and that adventure of the GM job, but managing up, how big of a factor is that?
Well, I think it's imperative that people at the very top are on the same page. And as the question you just posed about, free agents and what is the plan moving forward, like, you have to be in sync from that standpoint. And, the good thing in Seattle is we have all these resources at our disposal. Having someone like Ron Francis, who's been through so many of these different scenarios too, is very helpful for myself. So it's imperative. Like, as much as we just went through our amateur scouting meetings last week, we have our pro scouting meetings next week. Managing with the rest of your staff and making sure we're all on the same page. It's the same thing when managing up to our ownership group to make sure they understand what our plan is and how we're going to move forward here to make the next step as an organization.
Jason, we appreciate the time. Best of luck to you and the Kraken moving forward. It's going to be an exciting playoff race in the Western Conference, and you guys have been a big part of that. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.